The console was already refusing me when I set my second tool against it. Not a malfunction. I want to be precise about that, because the after-action reports use the word malfunction, and they are wrong. A malfunction produces error codes. It produces heat spikes, dead displays, the groan of a processor trying and failing. The Vel Amaran's central console produced none of those things. It simply did not respond. Every input I sent into it, standard activation sequence, emergency override, the Confederacy's Universal Decommission Authority Code that was supposed to open anything built in the last 12,000 years, passed through, the way light passes through still water. No resistance, no reply, nothing. Hiron had given up by the second hour. Preth lasted until the fourth, when he sat back on his heels, looked at me across the dark console bank, and said that the Ahul had been dead for 9,000 years, and probably intended to stay that way. He was not wrong to leave. Our orders were assessment and strip file, not resurrection. The Vel Amaran had been entombed in asteroid Dovin 7 since before the Confederacy had a name for itself, and every recovery team that had come out here across the centuries had filed the same report. Inert, unresponsive, unsalvageable. We were here to make it official. Sign the paperwork. Close the record. I because the console was warm. Not warm the way electronics run warm. Warm the way something living runs warm. A steady, even heat that moved slightly when I pressed my palm flat against the casing, the way a sleeper shifts when you put your hand on their shoulder. I could not explain it, and I did not try to. I cleared my kit to one side, pulled my lamp closer, and worked my way along the full length of the console bank, pressing my hand against each panel in sequence, and every panel was warm, and none of them answered. I was at the far end of the bank, near the inner hatch that connected the command deck to the forward corridor. When I heard the hatch seals disengage behind me, I did not turn around immediately. I assumed it was Preth coming back for a tool he had left. Then I heard the particular sound of Commander Devon Sarek's boots on a deck. He walks with his weight forward, a habit from years on smaller ships where you had to move fast. And I turned. He was in the hatchway. Helmet off, the way he always went without it. Once he decided a hull was safe enough, which was usually sooner than regulations permitted. He looked tired. We had been in the rock for 6 hours by then, and the cold of Dovin 7 got into the suit joints after the fourth. Ozin, he said. Time. 5 more minutes. You've been saying that for 2 hours. He came through the hatch, letting it seal behind him, crossed toward me with his hands in his pockets. That unhurried walk he used when he was annoyed, but had decided not to show it. There is nothing here. There has been nothing here for 9,000 years. Write the report. I opened my mouth to answer him. The console lit. Not gradually. Not a flicker. Not a single glyph testing itself the way old systems sometimes do when they find residual power. Every surface on the bank ignited at once. A deep, steady blue-white, the color of a star seen from distance. And the hum that came with it was not the hum of electronics. It was lower than that. It moved through the deck plating and up through my boots and into my sternum. And I stood very still because it felt like standing in the chest cavity of something enormous that had just drawn breath. Sarek had stopped walking. He was standing 4 meters from me, mid-deck. And he was looking at the console the way a man looks at something he does not have a category for yet. Panels along the forward bulkhead unsealed. Not all at once. In sequence, port to starboard. Each one, unclicking open with a sound like the word of a very old language, being pronounced correctly for the first time in centuries. Behind each panel, systems I had not known were there began to come online. Status columns and scripts I could not read. Structural displays showing full length of the ship. Every compartment, every corridor. The great sealed bays in the lower hull where something very large had been stored for a very long time. All of it was the same blue-white. All of it was oriented, I realized slowly, toward the center of the command deck. Toward where Sarek was standing. He had not moved. His hands were no longer in his pockets. He was watching the displays the way you watch something you recognize but cannot yet name. That moment, just before the word arrives. A secondary console rose from the deck to his left, unfolding from a housing I had walked past a dozen times without knowing it was there, and it rose until it was exactly at his height, and it stopped, and it waited. Sarek looked at it for a long moment. Then he looked at me. I had nothing useful to tell him. I shook my head. He looked back at the console. Slowly, with the deliberate care of a man who has learned that some situations require you to move as though every action has permanent weight, he raised his right hand and set it flat on the surface. The ship spoke, not from the console. Everywhere. From the deck and the bulkheads and the sealed bays and the long dark corridors that ran the length of the hull. A voice that was not a voice exactly. More the precise shape of one, the way a key is the precise shape of a lock. Old. Not old the way antique things are old. Old the way the rock of Dovan 7 is old, patient, without urgency, having long since released any expectation of being understood quickly. It said 4 words, 6 syllables, and then it was quiet. Warden of the outer threshold. I wrote them in my log the moment they finished, because I did not trust myself to hold them. I wrote them in the original, in the Vel Amaren's own script that I had been looking at on those panels for 6 hours without being able to read a character of it, and my hand formed the glyphs without my deciding to, the way your hand forms your own name. I stopped writing and looked at my hand for a moment. Then I looked at Sarek. He had not moved his hand from the console. He was not looking at the displays, or the panels, or the forward bulkhead, where the full architecture of the ship was still unfolding itself in blue, white light. He was looking at the secondary console's surface, at his own hand on it, and his face had the expression of a man doing arithmetic that keeps producing an answer he does not want. I knew Davin Sarek. I had served under him for 11 years. I had seen him in hull breaches and failed jump points, and the particular quiet crisis of a commander who has lost people and has to keep going. I had never seen him look like that, he said very quietly. How long has it been waiting? The ship answered. Not in words that time, in a number, rendered on every display simultaneously. In every numeral system the Confederacy used, and several it did not. 9,214 years. Give or take a decade, depending on how you counted the dormancy cycles in the deep rock. The sealed bays in the lower hull began to open. I did not go down to look. I stayed on the command deck, at my end of the console bank, watching the status columns update in a language that I could apparently read when I was not trying to. I let the commander stand at his console alone, because some things a person needs to absorb without being watched. The Velamaran was not broken. It had never been broken. It had been waiting, the same way a standing order waits, patiently, without complaint, for the authority that issued it to return, and either confirm or rescind. 9 millennia it had sat in the dark of Dovan 7 and refused every override and every decommission's code, because those codes did not carry the authority that had sealed it, and it had been built well enough to know the difference. Sarek stood at that console for a long time. When he finally lifted his hand, the secondary console did not retract. It stayed at his height, at his reach, oriented toward him. He turned and looked at me, and his face had settled into something I recognized, the expression of a man who has accepted a weight he did not choose and is already calculating how to carry it. Write the report, he said. What do I say? He looked around the command deck, the live displays, the open bays, the 9,000 years of blue-white patience coming fully awake in the rock of an asteroid that had been on no one's priority list since before the Confederacy had learned to count. Say we found it operational, he said. Say it's been operational the whole time. He put his hand back on the console, and the Velamaran held it there, the way a ship holds its commander. Steady, without ceremony, prepared for a very long voyage. I started writing.